minutes. I know, and as far as I know, Clint's going to be here. So.
For those of you in the overflow room, there are a couple of seats still available here in the boardroom. I'd like to read the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict. Does any board member have any known conflicts of interest with respect to any matters coming before the board today? See no indication. If so, please identify the conflict of appearance and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. Thank you very much. We want to now consider the minutes from last month's meeting. Are there any additions, changes to the meetings? If not, I'd like a motion to approve. And a second?
Motion, second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Obviously not. Certainly want to welcome Dr. Andy Bowman, who is our newest board member from the Southeastern District. This is his first meeting.
Thank you, sir.
And also point out that Andy, of course, as we all know, is the Director of Continuing Education at Campbell University College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, and as well serves as an Associate Professor in Clinical Practice. Andy is also the first, did I give you the wrong title, Andy? Are you Associate Professor?
I'm assistant, but I appreciate the promotion.
That's right, you have tenure now, congratulations.
I'll take that.
With great power comes great
I'll call Michael and change the paperwork.
But Andy is also, I think most of you know, is the first Campbell University graduate to serve on our board. So that's a momentous occasion, certainly for Andy personally, but also congratulations to the Campbell University College of Health Sciences.
That's pretty neat.
It is. We're excited about it. I'm excited about it for the school, and it's an honor and a privilege to serve with you guys. Looking forward to it. So, thank you.
Andy, I believe I saw where you folks produced 2 NFL players this time.
We did indeed. We did indeed.
I'm
Very good.
at
Andy's
the,
the agent for both of those guys.
oh, well, I understand now why he was posting all that.
He's waiting for certification from the NFL Players Association.
I probably shouldn't say this because it's being recorded, but they're getting ready to invite Campbell to join the ACC in football, and it'll probably be in the News and Observer in the next couple days. So,
More team to beat Wake Forest.
Well, y'all come on down. We seemingly can't get Notre Dame to do that.
I'll be watching you very, very carefully.
Congratulations, Andy.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. President, before we get into just a quick thing, obviously we do have a brief agenda today. There are a lot of update type things to do. It's a combination of one, we're only 3 weeks out from our last meeting, and also we have hit a nice part of our docket where we don't have any pressing hearings to come across. So I don't think most of this will. We have some important issues, but not lengthy issues, I think, to deal with today. And I have a couple. When we get down to the financial investigative reports, I have a couple of additional things I'll update the board on. But Mr. President, the first item on the agenda is, as is the case each year at the May meeting, the Board of Pharmacy selects its officers for the coming year. So the term of office would run from now till May of 2017, and the board selects a president and a vice president. I turn it over to you guys
Okay.
to do that.
Typically, the president serves 1 year. Although I'm happy to serve another year, I believe it's time to turn the gavel over to another board member. Are there any nominations for president?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Gene Minton for president. He served a lot of years in distinction, and I think he'd do a great job for us.
Very good.
I'll second.
Second. Any other nominations? All in favor of Gene being president next year, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And now we need to consider the role of vice president. Any nominations? Stan?
To suggest the name of Stan Haywood, make a nomination for him as vice president.
I'll second that. You willing to serve vice president?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm also willing to sit right down here.
Stan, you're only a heartbeat away.
He likes the corner where he can get out if he needs to. Okay. Mr. President, I commend you for the job you've done this year. You've done a great job.
Thank you very much.
And we thank you for your leadership on the board and all that you've done this year.
Thank you.
Can we make sure we got an actual vote on Stan? I can understand the reluctance to vote for Stan, but nonetheless, we probably should get that on the record.
Do we need a hand vote?
Just a verbal vote.
I think we had affirmation.
Okay, all right. We'll consider that done.
All opposed?
Know not what you're doing.
Who do we have on finance committee now?
Yeah, Mr. President, yeah, each year the board, of course, appoints a finance committee. It's comprised of 2 or 3 board members, whatever your pleasure is with respect to that. The current members were Carol, Jean, and Joey was serving on that committee. So obviously we do need to appoint one for this coming year. 2 or 3 will be fine. Just to recap for those of you, Jean, I know you've done this for all. Stan, you did it a number of times, but for Andy and Bill and Robert, the sort of general way the finance committee works is that during the summer months, Gail and Rhonda and I, the director heads, we put together a proposed budget. We get that to the members of the finance committee in August, usually early August of each year. We schedule a finance committee for some point toward the end of August of each year, and we can do that. You don't have to come here. You can if you want. We sometimes have a combination of in-person and telephone, and we have one meeting where we go through the budget line by line, and always get good feedback and suggestions from the finance committee for adjustments, maybe shift some priorities. At the conclusion of that meeting, based on the input that staff gets from the finance committee, we produce an amended proposed budget, and we put that, hopefully the finance committee approves that, then we put it before the full board at the September meeting. Andy, because you're new on this, our fiscal year runs from October 1 to September 30. So we always want to get a budget approved before we go into our next fiscal year. So that's the principal charge of the Finance Committee, but what Carol and Jean can certainly relate, that is from time to time during the course of the year, if there is a thought from the staff that we have an expenditure that was unexpected, that might require a budget, and we would like to have that adjusted in the budget, then we will present that to the Finance Committee and ask for their input and approval if they think it's the right thing to do. It is also my practice that if the staff feels that we need to add a new position, for example, or some other thing of that runs through the Finance Committee as well. The Finance Committee is also responsible for a periodic review of our investment policy, which is not a particularly complicated investment policy. It by and large tracks the statute that says what the state treasurer can invest in for certain things. So those are the general duties that the Finance Committee. Certainly Carol and Jean can speak with a great deal of experience about what's involved, but it is a critical responsibility.
I would like to propose that we have a brief recess for maybe 5 or 10 minutes to change our seating around a little bit and maybe have a couple of words with the board members about these various committees, and we'll come back at 9:20 and resume the meeting. Is that fair enough?
Works for me. We're adjourned for till 9:20.
Just remember, when y'all are talking about this, this all has, ultimately, all this needs to be done in the.
I see.
in the-
We're not gonna talk about this.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. As your Warri Ward attorney, so we-
So if anybody challenges the appointments of finance committee, you would be glad to confess error.
we do it.
Does the president serve as ex officio of any committee? or
We've never
all
done
committees?
that. We could, the only thing, Gene, be careful is that we don't accidentally then wind up with 4 board members, because
Ex
that,
officio is not a voting member.
I know, but presence still be considered a
I can
quorum.
stay in here.
That brief respite that we had, and thank the board members for the consideration of electing me president. I'll try to make sure that I'm timely, fair, and considerate, and try to do the best that I can in regards to that. We're gonna move on now to the Board Finance Committee. We're gonna need 3 members for the Board Finance Committee. And any volunteers for the Board Finance Committee?
I'll be glad to serve if.
Mr. Graves?
So moved.
Okay.
I'd like to stay on the finance committee. please.
Carol?
Mr. President, I'd be glad to serve.
You do know that you gotta make a $100 contribution to the President's Memorial Fund when you,
I understand that, sir. Yes.
so that's okay. So
Is
at this
that
In
time.
Canadian quarters.
Is that for the presidential basket?
I'm just surprised it was that small. $100 seems.
$100 a day.
Give him-
All day.
Give him time.
So, if it would be deemed appropriate, I'd ask the board to consider, a motion to appoint these 3 members to the Finance Committee.
Make a motion.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no, they're appointed. And we have another committee that's been studying telepharmacy, and that committee needs to be also 3 members. Do I have anyone interested in serving on that committee?
I'd like to continue.
Okay, Bill,
I'd like to remain on that committee as well.
Carol,
I'd like to continue.
and Stan. Do I have a motion to affirm that?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So that, Ms. Campbell, they are appointed.
That's the most efficient appointment we've ever done, I think.
Now, we, also on our agenda, we've got a travel expense policy for board members. I hope you've all had a chance to review that. It seems to be very straightforward, and I don't see any problems at all with that, and ask the board to consider to approve that by acclamation at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So that's approved, and if you just make sure we all get a copy
Yeah,
of
we'll do
that.
2 things. One, I'll make sure you get a copy of it. Number 2, we will add that. You all know when you go to your board member piece, we have various links to things. We'll include that as a link up there at the top.
Mr. Campbell.
Next item on the agenda, Mr. President, we need to do a little bit of talking here about our retreat. One, does the board still want to have one? My sense after last year is that you do like to, and I do think it's a worthwhile endeavor. We need to talk about dates and venue. I think I sent out a separate email telling you that I was an idiot for suggesting the dates that I did suggest,
You
and
go with you. and-
that would be just
that.
fine. We'll all convene in Paris and
Get a
have our
banquet
retreat.
hall there, arranged, it'll be fine.
But, so we need to think, if you want to have one, we need to say 1 or 2 day, dates and a venue. I did, based on some emails that went around, it looked like, September 7th, and we're not tied to, I should say too, we're not tied to any date, because we don't need to coordinate this with the leaders forum anymore. So I was throwing out dates, but if you guys say we'd rather have it a different time of the year, that's fine too. But if we're gonna have it roughly the same period of time, we tossed around Thursday, September 8th, and Friday, September 9th as a possibility. That's earlier than we normally do, and again, that's if there's blame on that, the blame goes to me.
How does that coincide with Labor Day?
Labor Day, Gene, would be Monday, September 5th, so
Oh,
this would
okay.
be the weekend after. But, Gene, it's a good thing to raise, because if folks, are taking vacation for Labor Day and don't want to take, vacation for the other 2 days, that could be an issue.
I think probably, Mr. Campbell, it would be a good idea to throw this date out at this meeting,
Okay,
to let the members take that date back, check with their
okay.
significant others,
Yep.
and make sure we don't have an issue with that, and then at the next meeting, we can probably approve or not, we can pick a date that time, and
I think
and maybe
that-
talk to you about a venue. We talked about a venue, maybe something different than maybe
What was
what
it,
you
8th and
anticipate.
9th?
8th and 9th,
September 8th and 9th.
Thursday and Friday.
Okay, well, the reason I was asking the 10th, a present ACC member is playing football in
Yes,
Illinois. Is
I
that
understood
weekend?
that.
Some of us might be going to Champaign.
Yeah, we can, wherever we are, you can make travel arrangements after that.
Why don't y'all look at those dates and communicate back? to
They're
Mr.
fine with
Campbell?
me.
I think that's what.
I'm good.
Good.
We don't need to-
What response did you get back?
Oh, the ones who responded, you said that date looked good, Andy said that date looked good, Carol said that date looked good, and Bill said that date looked good.
I didn't say, but it's good.
It's good with you, so, but we don't have to do, if you want to take some time and look, Gene, that's.
No, it's fine, I'll talk to you about a venue, we might do something a little different.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Yeah, no, that's fine, whatever you want to do, but let's get that soon because Leslie's going to need enough lead time to
Okay.
make sure.
Cool. It
Are
might
you
be a-
planning to have it here?
Well, that's
We're
what
gonna talk about the venue, we're gonna talk about the venue.
Oh, well, Pinehurst Resort's a good place.
we can. Y'all let us know what you
Okay.
got in mind. We have some information about one possible venue, which you're free to consider or not, as you like, and, but yeah, we just want to make sure Leslie has enough.
Well, let's tentatively say now, then it's gonna be the 8th and the 9th.
Okay,
That sounds to be everybody's best date.
I'll keep that open and y'all let me know.
and we'll decide on the
work
venue by next month.
I'll talk to you about the
Okay.
venue, okay?
Okay,
And, good,
sounds good.
thank you.
Ethics refresher training, just a reminder that we previously agreed that we would do our biennial required ethics training on Monday, June 20th. That is the day before the next meeting. Now, I know for Stan and Robert, you guys are probably looking at this and suppressing a gag reflex since it's only been a year since you redid yours. But what I'm hoping to do is get us all on the same schedule. Selfishly, that's easier for me to keep up with, but I think you all know you've done the training. I think it's about 2 hours to get through the thing.
What time of day you planning that?
I'm open for that because we do have pre-hearing conferences that day, and Carol's a pre-hearing conference officer, so we need to avoid an overlap, but we can shift.
Well, the reason I'm asking, at 6 o'clock that night, we have to approve our final county budget. But if it's during the day, I can be here and drive back to Ashburn.
The plan I had in mind was either to do it in the morning, or we could shift PHCs to the morning and do this early in the afternoon. I don't care either way.
Well, I just need to leave here by about 4:30 to get to Ashburn. I
I
have to
don't
be
think
at
that'd
that,
be a problem.
I have to be at that county meeting.
What time do you anticipate pre-hearing conferences starting? I know that's not a fair question.
I
No,
think
that's
we've
fair.
only noticed 1 or 2, so it's probably 2 or 3 o'clock, but we can move them if there's enough time to
I just wonder if
move
we
them
could,
whenever we need to move them.
But I tell you what we could do, maybe this would be the simplest thing. If the pre-hearing conference is gonna start at 2, let's assume they're gonna start at 2, we could start this at noon, have lunch brought in,
Yeah.
do the ethics training at noon. We would definitely be done in time for Carol, and that gets Stan out of here and Boo-Koodles the time to get back to the county commissioners. Does that work?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
I
let's
just,
do that.
I just need to leave about 4:30 and that'll get me to Ashburn in plenty of time.
that
Let's-
seems to be a good alternative.
We'll do that, and we'll get lunch brought in, so it's not as awful a slog as it might be otherwise.
And so PHC's gonna be at 2.
Yeah, that's what we've
Okay.
noticed as the first one, but
Okay.
if we need to, like Clint said, if we need to shift that for any reason, just let Clint know, 'cause we got plenty of time to notice people with an update.
Our list is short, so I won't start anything before 2.
I'll stay, do that with you again.
Mr. President, the next item, boy, looks like we're in for a solid 45 minutes worth here. Our next item on the agenda, wanted to report on amendments to the rules governing the CPP practice. I am happy to report that after the usual but productive back and forth with the Rules Review Commission, Clint may dispute that characterization, but we did get the final rules amendments approved. They are, the amended rules go into effect on July 1st, 2016. There were certain changes that were made that are more sort of practice-based, but the single biggest change in the CPP rule amendments is now the Board of Pharmacy, rather than the Medical Board, will be the body primarily responsible for all administrative aspects of CPP, credentialing and monitoring, which is good. In fact, it was something that the Medical Board first brought up, and I sort of had to pick myself up off the floor and pinch and see how long I'd been asleep. But as you'll see here, Ellen, Debbie, and Karen Masita, who works on our CPP advisory committee, and we got together to anticipate some immediate questions and sort of plan out next steps. I have a draft FAQ that deal with the immediate questions that we think CPPs are going to have, and I do want to focus on one thing on that for your understanding and okaying. But before I do that, just to let you know, Debbie is going to be meeting with her colleagues over at the medical board later this week to begin the process of transitioning whatever records and databases that we need from them over. So that's going to take some time, but I think we've got plenty of time. On the FAQ, the one thing I wanted to specifically point out to you guys, and of course all of you, you're welcome to and invited to comment on any of these, but a sort of an administrative challenge we have with the switchover is that the medical board has always renewed CPPs, as they do all of their licensees, on the month of their birthday. It's sort of a rolling renewal. Of course, we don't do that. We're set up to do annual renewals. Our feeling was, and the rule is written such that CPPs will now renew their CPP credential annually, just like they do their pharmacist license. That creates a little bit of a challenge, though, is that how do you transition that? Our proposal, which you will see in here, is that if the board is agreeable, we will deem any CPP who holds a CPP credential as of July 1st, or any CPP that acquires a CPP credential to the end of this calendar year, that their CPP credential will be deemed to be valid until the end of 2017. So that means that there are some CPPs that will, well, it means that no CPP will get less than a year's worth on their current credential. Some will get more, but we batted around and couldn't come up with what we thought was a better way to do this. So, but because it is sort of an extension of something under the rules, I'd prefer to at least get an acclamation or agreement from the board that that's an okay thing to do. Now, the other significant advantage is that means the first renewal cycle where our databases will have to have an online for CPBs will be at the end of 2017. That gives us time to build all of this into the new IT system that we're building out now. So. But I don't want anybody to be uncomfortable with the notion that some CPPs would essentially have a credential extended for 3 or 4 months. I'm sure the CPPs aren't going to complain, but.
You need a formal motion for that?
A motion would be fine, yeah, on that.
I'll make a motion to follow protocol as you've suggested.
Second.
Have a second? Any further discussion? See that all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the rest unanimous.
Appreciate this, and what I'm going to plan to do is go ahead and post this FAQ today because we're getting a lot of questions from CPPs about that. We're going to provide some reassurance on that.
Let me digress just a bit. I did ask you on the board travel policy that you give us all a written copy of it, right?
Yes,
Okay.
you want it, what I'm going to do, I'll give you a written copy.
Email it'll be fine, somebody.
Is email okay? If anybody wants a written copy, I do, but I just send email it.
Email.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do that. You bet. I'm gonna email and post on your portal for that. Legislative update, several things to go through, and some of you may have better updates on these than I have, and certainly Clint can chime in on any of these. He's been following them as well. Several bills have been introduced that affect, not necessarily the pharmacy board specifically, but the occupational licensing boards generally. I just want to run through those, so as your legislative liaison, if there's anything that you need me to be aware of, if I'm asked questions or the like, then I'm prepared for that. First is Senate. I'm going to give most of these by the Senate number, although they all have companion House bills that are identical. Senate 743 simply authorizes the Joint Legislative Administrative Procedure Oversight Committee to continue studying the licensing boards, including this issue of oversight of the licensing boards generally and disciplinary policy. I'm frankly not sure why they necessarily need a bill to do this, since we're under their jurisdiction anyway, but I did find it maybe interesting that unlike previous bills that talked about studies of the licensing boards that would say shall report something, this one just says may. I don't know if that means anything or what, but at any rate, clearly I think this is something that's going to pass, and again, I don't know that it's a substantive change of anything. They can study us all the livelong day if they're so
I
inclined.
think you've seen that when it came down to the real deal, it was a fiasco.
That would be the noun I would choose to describe that last meeting.
That's why it could instead of should, instead of should.
I have, that was my interpretation of this, so I'm pleased that somebody else with more experience has the same purpose, so we shall see. Senate 744 would specifically require each licensing board to provide that committee with a name and contact number for an individual responsible for filing reports. Again, I'm not sure what the impetus of this is. They have my information over there, and there's a whole spreadsheet. Maybe, the only thing I can guess is maybe there are some boards that aren't providing. I don't know, but at any rate, we'll be happy to send over my contact information anytime they want it. The substantive bill, the more substantive issues that are up, Senate 783, Gene is certainly aware, and I think Stan's probably aware, or maybe all of you are, but the joint legislative divided into two subcommittees on the licensing board. One of those subcommittees was tasked specifically with considering what, if any, changes in state law were needed to provide some additional protection to the boards from an antitrust standpoint. And Representative Sarah Stevens chaired that subcommittee. That committee brought a bill forward. It received a very quick endorsement from the full JLAPO. And so that's Senate 783 and its companion bill H1007. Just briefly walking through what that bill does. Number one, it requires board members to be trained on antitrust law and state action immunity. This would be in addition to the other statutory trainings you get. Now, you guys all know Clint and I have been doing this for about 4 years now, so that doesn't require any substantive change for us. It does require that boards have rules in place concerning receipt of complaints, resolution, enforcement actions, etc. We, of course, do have a set of rules that already does that. I would think, and Clint and I can maybe bring forth some suggestions when the time is right, or if this bill passes, there may be some changes we might want to consider making to some of those rules. Clint and I have batted that around a couple of times over the years, but we'll see. But again, fundamentally, I think that there was a concern, if some of you will remember out of the PED report, that a belief that some occupational license boards really didn't have good processes in place, or at least didn't communicate what they were. So this, I think, is forcing folks to do that. Again, shouldn't require much on our end. Number three would require any interpretation, clarification, or other delineation of scope of practice to be done by rulemaking. Application of this might get a little bit tricky, would you say, Clint, in the specifics, but the gist of what they're after here, this goes back again to the dental board, that they want, in a situation where there's an argument, take the dental board, is teeth whitening the practice of pharmacy. Their preference, or the mandate now, would be that if an occupational licensing board is going to make a ruling of that sort, they do it by the rulemaking process, so that it has notice and comment, it's subject to ORC review. I think that's in gross what they're trying to do. One of the questions, at some level, every rule we ever make is an interpretation of scope of practice and other things, but Clint, anything?
Well, and another question is, do we have to pass a rule that says if you ship without a permit, it's the unpermitted practice of pharmacy, since it's clear the statute says that with the RRC, even let us adopt such rules. So it's not clear whether you have to adopt rules that track word for word the statutes.
We're hopeful that the answer to that is no. And I do expect the RRC would say the answer to that is no. But we'll see. But
Of course, the
again,
dental board would say that's what they were doing in their case as well.
that's fair enough. Fair enough. So if this passes, we'll deal with it as it comes. Number 4 specifically authorizes licensing boards to investigate unlicensed practice, notify practitioners of potential legal action. It sets forth venues for enforcement actions. What this is really doing is they want to make it crystal clear that it is state policy that it's okay for occupational licensing boards to notify folks who may be engaged in unlicensed practice. We think you're engaged in unlicensed practice. You may disagree. If you do, here's how we can resolve that. And it includes some language that would need to be included in each and every one of those types of letters that's designed to track what the Federal Trade Commission required the dental board to do. So that doesn't require any big change in anything we already do, except to make sure we specifically paste in the statutorily required paragraph, which would not be a problem. Number 5 would require that any jurisdictional disputes between occupational licensing boards, that the boards can't get together and resolve informally, that the venue for resolution of that would be through the Office of Administrative Hearings. And some of you are familiar with OAH. They have administrative law judges who sit and they handle various administrative law disputes. What is driving this is it's been crystal clear in the legislature that they are sick and tired of boards who have some dispute among themselves about, well, is what you're doing in my bucket or in your bucket or both of our buckets, and how do we deal with that? The historic example that they always bring up is the barbers and cosmetologists who are engaged in at least perennial low-level conduct and occasionally full-on conventional and unconventional warfare over that. They don't want to deal with that. And the latest is they're very chapped about the physical therapist board and the acupuncture licensing board fighting about dry needling. Is that PT? Is it not? Is it only acupuncture? So the point of this is to drive boards to resolve this amongst themselves, which is what boards should be doing anyway. And if they can't do that, to say you've got to go over to OAH, which I don't know is a great venue, frankly, to get these sorts of things resolved, but it's a reason to get it resolved between ourselves.
And there's a recent decision in the business court which suggested that if you've got a problem with, and it was in an acupuncture board case, if you've got a problem with another board, you've got to go before that board and ask for them to resolve the dispute you have with them, which is just silly. So although this is not my ideal resolution, it's certainly better than the silly one suggested.
But again, where this lands for us is, you know, from time to time, we have to have a discussion with the medical board or the nursing board, whomever it is, and that's the way we've handled it over the years, and that's the way we ought to keep handling it. So stay out of it wherever we can.
Jay,
Yep.
Jay, perhaps I'm the only one. I understand what you're talking about right now, and I agree with that part. But here I'm looking at all these bills put forth by the legislature that puts its tentacles into the practice of pharmacy. It seems to me that the practice of pharmacy should be the one initiating bills rather than the legislature. I talked to my representatives, and they have no clue about the practice of pharmacy, except we walk in a drugstore, get a prescription filled, and walk out. They don't know pharmacy. And it honestly bothers me that the legislature is reaching out when we should be the ones who go to the legislature. I see them infringing on a professional healthcare practice that they know nothing about. Now, I've told this to Senator Tillman and Representative McNeil and Representative Hurley. But I think we as a board somehow should be proactive to educate the legislature that when we need you, we'll come for you. Till then, please stay out of our life. And I know that's impossible. I really do, because they're into everything. It's their nature. It's who they are. But somehow or another, I think we need to try to educate them that let's let pharmacists regulate pharmacists to the point that we should, and when we get beyond that, then we'll send you and Clint over to the legislature to straighten it out.
Well, one thing I will say, one thing about that is that the number of bills, I think, is a little bit misleading looking at it, because to your point, at least these first three bills I'm talking about, they really aren't about us.
That's right.
Specifically, it's about the occupational license board generally, although I'll certainly confess, I have a great deal of sympathy and appreciation for your position, even with respect to occupational license boards generally, having dealt with one review after another for 3.5 years. I mean, the amount of hours that staff has had consumed dealing with one inquiry, report, audit, you name it, over the past 3.5 years. I've not kept a track of the hour, probably should have, but it has affected our ability to carry out our regulatory mission. I mean, we're a small group.
I just think, we're professionals. The board is charged with looking after our profession. Let us do it. Stay out of our lives, but I don't know how you get that
One
across.
thing I have found encouraging this, and that's like, if I could use that as a segue to the next one to talk about the naloxone thing, I will say that has been an encouraging process because the standing order for naloxone, of course, that was not something that the legislature came up with itself. That's the driving, pulling the oars on that really has been the Department of Health and Human Services. But as you guys will recall, their first instinct was to reach out to this board and say, this is something we're interested in, something we think is good for public health, and we'd like to talk to you. Remember, they came and did a whole presentation on that. So that has been encouraging. And that bill has been introduced, S-734. And I can tell you, Stan, that when that was heard by Senate Health last week and flew through that with no objection, and Dr. Randall Williams, who's the state health director, made it a point to thank this board on the record for its support and thoughtful consideration of that bill. So,
I wish they had let you be a key witness to speak on it.
well, I was asked to come over there, and I came over there and I sat down, and nobody ever asked me a question. But in fairness, I think that was a good stand. It wasn't controversial.
I just feel like that pharmacists are professional enough and valuable enough that the legislature need to talk to pharmacists about pharmacy issues. That's my position. It's an education thing, and I don't know how we go about that. I admit that. Like
And
I
I
say,
do think some of it too, Stan, is I think it points out the importance of having vibrant associations, because as you know, we're in this weird scenario where by law, we can't lobby.
exactly.
We can be an educational resource.
And I'm not talking about
Oh,
law.
I know you're not, but it puts us in a weird box.
It does.
Yeah.
I just think that you, as the executive director of this board, should be, when they have issues with pharmacy, they should come to you. They should ask you. They should consider your opinion, knowing that behind your opinion is this crowd.
And as you guys know, and Andy, you're new to this, anytime I have ever offered an opinion upon request from the legislature, each and every time I've come to the board first and said, this is the legislation that's on the table, what are your feelings about that, give me your direction as to what your.
Well, like I say, and I'll be quiet, we have folks that gone through 4 years of undergraduate work, then they come back and do 4 more years of pharmacy, and they're doctors of pharmacy, and they're recognized as valuable healthcare professionals by the public. And you have some legislatures who are high school graduates making regulation to regulate these people.
And I do think we saw some of that, Stan, that the full jail APO meeting that Gene referred to a while ago, I think that was a good example of that I think, I'm not impugning anybody's intentions or
Me
goodwill,
either.
but I think that was a good example of where the complexity of what some of us do it's hard to understand, and that's not a knock against anybody who's looking at it.
Exactly.
It's hard to understand, and that's why I think that committee meeting sort of went off the rails, because I think it became very clear that complexity had not been adequately considered.
I just think in some ways it's the tail wagging the dog, but maybe I'm from Moore County, you gotta remember that, so what I know.
Anybody in the pool had the Wynwood stand bring out the first time from Moore County of the year. If you had May, you won. On that one. No, I appreciate that, Stan, and I certainly appreciate, I know some of you guys have relationships with certain members.
Well, I've tried to communicate to our group that, hey, we've got a board, we've got an executive director that would be glad to help you, just reach out to them.
In my experience, Stan, has been each and every time any legislator has ever reached out, either to me directly or through you guys, it invariably is a positive interaction. It doesn't mean we all agree on what the right thing is, but each and every time I've felt like everybody walked away having learned something, including me, maybe me most of all. So we have had individual legislators over the years that have done that, but it's certainly not a regular practice.
Agree.
But I am ready, willing, and able, and that's why I've tried to make it a practice too, as these bills get introduced. I know y'all don't want to get bombarded by emails from me, but also go ahead and send it to you so you guys can have it and know, and if we've got a scramble the alert aircraft situation, we can do that.
I think it's a good point. I think that we've got to keep in mind, we can't lobby,
Oh, I know that,
but NCAP or.
but we can educate, we don't have to.
Well,
Association of
others
Pharmacists
can.
can lobby.
But what we are clearly is an educational
We
resource.
can educate, but, you know, if we had a better working relationship with the other professional organization, that would be a,
Well, I
can
think
initiate
every pharmacist should have the state senator and their legislators programmed in their cell phones. And if you want them right now, we just dial a number
I
and we
have
get.
said that in about 100 CEs over the years, that I totally agree with that. Let me, just one last thing while we're talking about that. Our proposed language that would give us the authority to enter into a contract with a private entity to do criminal background checks. I did talk with Andy and Mike at the Senate Healthcare Committee, both of whom indicated they'd had very positive discussions with some folks that can make this happen. So at least the information I'm getting is that appears to be something that will get added on to another bill, and at some point over the short session, we should have that. At which point, if we get that authority, then probably Josh and I will sit down and come up with a request for proposal and accept, see what we can.
it'll just appear.
Just for my curiosity, when we start doing background checks and something's there, what are you gonna do with it?
That's a great question, and it goes back, I tell you what our thoughts are right now, but we'll obviously have to develop it. You recall, was it last month, John? It was last month recall that we're doing the periodic sweep of the Administrative Office of the Courts record. So we get a nightly report on each and every one of our licensees and registrants. Anybody, and it's only for the North Carolina court system, but it pings. And on that, you guys gave us the authority last month to do a change to that contract to give us a little sharper data, and we're right about to, we're on the cusp of implementing that. But we came up with a policy, because it's the same thing. We're getting the same type of information, and we came up with a policy that we would group any criminal charges into 3 tiers. Tier 1 would be cases that require us to open an investigation. Tier 2 cases probably don't require us to open an investigation, but certainly ones at least we'll monitor through to completion and figure out. And then Tier 3, minor traffic offenses, hunting regulation violations, that sort of stuff it has nothing to do with what we regulate. We're going to need to come up with some similar policy for the initial background. My hope is that a policy for that would be an almost one-to-one reflection of the policy. I mean, I don't know why it should be different, right? If it's important enough to be a tier 1 for the periodic sweep, it should be for the other. But that's going to be Josh and I's responsibility once we start that new process, to have something in place from day one. To know how, of course, the difference is it's not so much we're opening an investigation because it's a new applicant, but will be which applicants do we need to explore further, and what is the licensing process for someone who falls into one of those tier 1.
And all these background checks are on people requesting a license, not people who are already licensed.
That's correct. We do the suite for everybody that already is licensed. That's
Everybody.
That's everybody. And it took us, Stan, what would you say, Josh, about 3 months to really get our arms around that, because individual licensees or registrants we have, that's over 30,000 people that are getting
Yeah.
swept every night. So that's a lot of data. Cindy can testify to that with, that's why she has one eyebrow cocked. But it's a lot of, but I think, thanks to you guys reviewing our policy last time, I do think we have a rational policy, and the improvements and the focusing and what we're gonna get from our nightly report should speed that up. But it's a big task.
Okay,
We're getting there.
good deal.
The key for us, Stan, really is, it's not, I don't think anybody would disagree that we need to be doing that. And Robert was enormously helpful, helping us think through that process.
He probably also would be an enormous resource for this naltrexone thing.
Yeah. But the key for us was having a process in place that's not paper-based. We regulate too many people to have a paper-based process for this. We can't do it. We'd have to hire a whole new staff to,
Well, we just need to guard that every person should, if there's something there, we should have policy in place that allows them to have due process,
no
whatever.
question about it. That's A1 priority. And that's gonna be our responsibility, staff, to come to you guys. And we're not gonna by fiat start telling people, oh, well,
Agree.
you can't get licensed, you're never gonna get licensed. We'll have that in place. And some of the things we can think about when the time comes, Stan, is, it may be that when we're doing these for new, especially during the summer months, that's the bulk of our new applicants, it might be that we'd consider having something akin to a pre-hearing conference process. But that's really gonna be driven on how many hits we get, and we're not gonna know what that is until we start the process. But, and it's also something that maybe we could discuss at the retreat.
Are we the only state gonna do this, or are others doing it?
I'm sorry, what now?
Yeah, is North Carolina the only state that's gonna do this, or are others doing it?
Different states do it in different ways, and whether they do it all and to what degree. What I'm hopeful is that if we can get this authority to, now, we have an authority to do background checks. That's how we're doing the sweeps that we're doing now. The problem for the initial background check, if you recall, is that our authority for that spoke specifically to using the SBI's process, which is paper-based and cumbersome. So what I'm hoping is that we'll get in the situation that the real estate commission is, that everything's contracted, it's electronic, the results get pushed electronically into an online application, and we can sort it and come out. If we've got to peel through these things, we're not gonna.
I know that once we establish policy, it'll be published,
No question.
but I just want to make sure that licensing candidates and reciprocity candidates are well aware of it.
No, that will be, once it's implemented, hopefully, once it's implemented, that policy will exist, and that will become part of the application materials. Because there will have to be instructions for this is how you go and do it, this is electronic, and here's what we do with it.
Well,
You're right on it, that's what we've got to develop.
I've done all the talking, maybe some of these other folks have got an opinion.
Well, until we see a definite policy, I certainly don't want to seem like we're trying to be big brother.
No.
Intrusive
That is not the
people's
intent.
lives.
That is not the
So
intent.
I
Y'all,
think,
y'all got to have something concrete to
I
work.
think every
Unquestionably.
pharmacist needs to know that they're going to be subject to a background check.
That's exactly right. That's
Every
exactly-
so and such, that type of thing. I think you need to be careful with this, that you don't overuse it without a
Unquestionably,
policy.
for all the reasons you've stated.
Right.
And there's a resource issue, and that's why we spent the past 3 months really coming up with that policy that you guys approved last time on that, because we felt like it really funneled this down so that it's not gonna be that we're jumping up and down and running out and investigating everybody who has any little thing comes in. The question for us fundamentally is, what criminal charges or convictions are there that either are directly listed as a basis for discipline in our statute, or potentially implicate mental, physical, other disability type thing that questions fitness to
So our
practice.
policy will specifically address and delineate those, is that right?
It did. The policy you guys approved
We
last
got
month
that already.
specifically does that. That's the three-tier system on that. And the only cases that, for the periodic sweep, that generate an immediate investigation are the very specifically delineated ones on there. It's the felonies involving controlled substance, misdemeanors involving controlled substance, except for marijuana possession. We talked about why we can't run out and do every one of those. Aggravated DUIs, which indicate a potential substance use disorder issue. Single DUIs above a certain blood alcohol content. And that's about it, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, so we're not going and saying every time somebody, gets pinged for, whatever, the litany of things, somebody has a bad night that he's not here and gets in a stupid bar fight, we're not going out and looking to take people's license on that. Take their beating and he's not here and get on with their lives, I guess.
Have we published those, that protocol yet?
I have it in my inbox to get done, so.
I have a question. What obligation is there for licensees to report?
Oh,
A simple DUI, an
the
aggravated?
only required affirmative report is on renewal each year. There's nothing in the statute or rules that mandate a report any particular time, which is one of the reasons we went to the sweep, is that we'll get that. But folks do have to report, and one of the things we debated internally was, well, if we're doing the sweep, do we even need to ask people on renewal about that? And our feeling is that yes, we do, at least for the reason that, remember, our periodic sweep is only the North Carolina court system. We
So
license a lot of
actually
folks
what
for
you're
that.
saying, I think what Bill's getting to is, on your renewal, you're specifically asked if you've been charged.
Correct.
Not convicted, of charged. of
Well, it
any
says charged, convicted.
charge.
Yeah.
And so, in you doing this sweep, you'll have all that information available,
Only for North Carolina.
only for, and that almost discriminates against your North Carolina pharmacists, but
We looked, and Robert can talk to this.
I'm just saying, let me finish. What I'm saying
Yeah.
is that when you do your renewal, if you've got one of these that doesn't throw a red flag up, but you have one and you say no, then you have an automatic red flag because you weren't truthful on your application.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So I think that's one reason that people need to be told specifically.
Oh, I don't disagree with that
Yeah,
at all.
because,
Nobody here does.
that's where the big brother thing starts
Right.
coming in there. Yeah, well, anyway.
But to your point though about out of state and federal, I mean, Robert and we talked about that. The challenge there is you can have as much sweep as you're willing to pay for. And the cost of having some sort of sweep that would be for all our licenses would hit, we'd have to hit every individual state, federal, and others.
I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying, but I'm from Burt T. County, we try to treat everybody the same, okay? No matter where they live. So there you go. No matter what they look like, what color, we treat everybody the same.
Our ideal would be that we would have some sweep
Okay.
like that,
All right.
but
Let's
that's
move
that's
ahead
looking for
then.
the unicorn in the forest there.
Okay.
All right, anything else on the legislative stuff? I did do a sweep yesterday to see if anything new had come over the transom, and I hadn't seen anything.
I have a question, I hate to prolong this, but I do have a question. Looking at this, the bill, statewide standing order opioid
For now,
antagonist. It starts out saying, the following individuals may prescribe an opioid antagonist in the manner prescribed by this subsection. And number one, it says a practitioner. Who's defined as a practitioner?
Oh, that's, as it's defined in other state law, what that means is anybody who is allowed in any way in state law to have prescribing authority that they can prescribe it. So that could include, for example, certainly that would include physicians, nurse practitioners, PAs. It would include CPPs if this is part of their CPP protocol. But it's not separately defined here because I think what they did not want to do is recreate the Medical Practice Act, Nursing Practice
Right.
Act, PA Practice Act, optometry, you name it.
And I understand that. The question I had was, isn't it typically now that police officers use it?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not who can prescribe it, but it's who can receive it. And that goes to the point here is and again, this goes back to 2001 or
So I understand,
2013.
but my
Yeah.
question, to be specific,
Yeah.
is, once that practitioner, be it the state health director,
Whoever
gives
it
me
is.
the authority as a
Right.
police officer to have that, whatever naloxone on
Right.
my, and I have a case where I think it might be good, I can give it to anybody I want to, but I'm not a
Yes, you can.
practitioner.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to give it to another practitioner.
No, that's not my question. I can give it to anybody I want to, but I don't have to be a practitioner
Oh,
to do
correct.
that.
No, because the state standing order acts as the
understand.
prescription.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, you don't have to. Yeah, sorry, it took me a while to round on that, but,
But you know, if you
No.
read through the law is not really clear in regards to that.
well, and that's, none of the, of course, you've been around it longer than I
This is
have.
back to Stan's point.
Yeah.
If we had constructed that legislation or been a party to that being done through NCAP or something like that, I think it might have been a little more clear.
Probably, and that's why they've gone back to it about 3
Understand.
times, I think.
The
to try to-
fiasco syndrome again, okay. That's enough said about that.
I'm gonna put
To-
that in my lexicon. the
To
fiasco.
expand on that, so in B1, the practitioner is not the pharmacist when he's dispensing.
Sorry, B1, a practitioner made directly or by standing or prescribed. No, that's not, the pharmacist is not a prescriber, unless it's a CPP who has the authority to do
But
it.
we can dispense, so the prescriber, if we dispense naloxone, will be the health director? That's whose name will go on the prescriber's
Right,
line?
if this goes through, there is, and I've sent it to you guys at some point, I can resend it, but there is a draft standing order that's going around. And that standing order would be issued, in this case by Dr. Randall Williams, and it would say, any pharmacy that wants to participate in this standing order needs to let me know through somebody that you're participating in this. And then it spells right out, here are the people to whom you can dispense naloxone, here are the products, and you can pick among the ones that are authorized here, and you dispense it. But that list includes person at risk of an opioid related, a family member, friend, or other person. Another person is very, very broad. That can include law enforcement, EMS, you name it. It's incredibly, incredibly broad. But you would have that standing order, and that is your prescriptive authority to dispense naloxone to anyone who meets the criteria spelled out in that standing order.
And so there's a standing order going around, is that?
There's a,
terminology
and
you
y'all
use?
have gotten a copy
Yeah,
of that
okay.
before, but yeah.
But
going on.
it's still subject to scrutiny, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's because the statute's not going to prescribe the detail
Right.
of the standing order.
And back to Stan's point,
Yeah.
maybe possibly we could make a comment on that standing
Right,
order.
absolutely. That's why I'd sent it to you guys before, so,
So we'll take a look at that.
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
And I can resend it.
Please do.
will the county health department be able to do this?
Yep,
Not anybody that wants to, isn't that right?
yep. It'd be any, under that standing order, any pharmacy, health department, drug code, you name it. Can, I think the way you would opt in, there would just be a notice you would give on a website, we're using this, and then you're off to the races, dispensing it.
Of course, it could be somewhat cost prohibitive when somebody got to start paying for it, because that stuff's pretty expensive.
Other questions on that? All right. Yeah, I'll resend that draft standing order to you guys. All righty. Oh, hang on. I got too many tabs open.
So if we have comments on the standing order, should we direct them through you?
You can if you like, or I could also, that would probably be the best thing, so we could channel them all, but Anna Stein, who's an attorney over at DHHS, has been sort of the collector of that sort, and you'll have her comments. So it's certainly, I guess what I would suggest is, if you have comments as an individual citizen, certainly you could do that directly. If you wanted to make a comment as coming from the board, I think it'd be better if we just consolidate it, and I'll send any comment that you guys think needs to be sent on that, so.
Or possibly offer our own version of the standing order.
You certainly could do that.
That's not lobbying, is it? That's just doing
No,
our
it's
job.
not. Anyway, we
Right,
could
Stan?
talk about that. That's,
What you talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
All right. I will get that out to you guys.
Let Josh take it over there.
Let Josh what?
Let Josh take it over to him. This is the Board of Pharmacy, this is what we want you to do.
Okay.
You're the closest.
I
one.
endorse that.
You're the
That'd be
closest one
fine.
to the door.
That would be fine. I'll be behind you, Josh, all the way, way behind you. All righty, financial report. I think Rhonda's gonna do that.
Thank you for not suggesting that I take it.
Hey, they ain't over yet.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I have prepared with Gail the April 30th financials. The total cash receivables are $8,620,831, excuse me. The excess revenue over expenditures are $1,433,799, and the fund balance is $10,281,165. So I just wanted to highlight a couple items as far as the expenditures go. The total expenditures at the end of April are $2,552,683. So the building expense line you'll see is currently over budget by $33,845. So we had a lot of the HVAC units replaced, so that was a large expenditure. The building is about 12 years old, so those were having some issues, and it's just cheaper to just replace them. The next item that's pretty high would be the PRN and PHP line, and those are over, that line is over budget by $165,068. So as you know, we changed from PRN to PHP, and that was a large chunk of expense up front to do the change.
Those were the one-time costs, which we did run through the finance committee, if you recall on that.
So we don't have to take we don't need to take a official action approving this, is that right?
Something
What?
like- Do what?
We don't have them. All we have is your letter.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to take a, I don't know how you want to take a break and copy them?
Yeah, I can actually post them again.
Give us a minute. Y'all probably need to, when Cindy says so, hit refresh on the financial
Okay,
report.
we'll take a look at just,
All right.
are you doing that now, Cindy?
Yeah,
Just refresh your browser?
not yet.
Not
We need
yet?
one second.
What else you want to talk about, Ron?
Well, it's a nice day outside.
Jay, it's probably not the place,
Maybe we should take a break.
but you know me, a lot of times I miss opportunities to keep my mouth shut, but
Really?
So stipulated.
I see this fund balance, and quite honestly, that bothers me.
I know it's bothered you for a long time.
So I don't know what we could do about it, but it might ought to be that it become a retreat agenda item. And-
Well, and remember too, one of the things we've done is some of this is fenced off now.
Yeah.
And you remember actually a fairly large chunk of this has now been fenced off for insurance reserve and the IT upgrade but yeah, I mean, we can certainly talk about it at the.
I would choose to have that issue brought up by the finance committee
Yeah,
and have them look at it specifically.
That's
You remember
fine.
that?
I just,
which would be in advance of the retreat.
I think that something of that nature needs to be discussed according to an agenda item.
I agree.
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
I just wanted to make my 2 cents worth thrown out there.
It's a great point. I think we need to address it, but I think that,
I think the president and the executive director needs plenty to do, so I bring these things up.
okay.
Is it ready there, Sandy?
Andy, you see what you're getting into?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be quiet.
You want to go ahead and do that?
That's what Clarence Thomas does.
We got a technical
Just
snag.
quiet.
Cindy's gonna go make copies.
That's fine. So you want to just put Ron on hold for a minute? We'll do the investigative
Yeah,
report.
I think that's
Okay.
exactly what we ought
I'll
to do.
just slide right there.
Thank
Actually, well, let me get one thing. Josh, you can come on up, but one thing on that. I did hand out to each of you, Wendy put together a sheet. It sort of ties into finances. She put together a sheet with all the renewal statistics for 2016. I don't have any need, there's nothing in here that's unusual in our renewal statistics,
Okay.
except that don't be misled that there's what appeared to be a significant drop in pharmacy permits. In 2014, we had a transfer of ownership, so we had an anomalously large number, but nothing else is in there. You'll see the numbers that were closed, and if you have any questions about that, certainly feel free to ask, or you can send me an email, but everything looks as it should on that. Sorry, Josh.
Oh, no problem. All right, so the investigative stats. So through May 6th, our folks have worked a total of 97 cases. Procedural legal are still out in front with 46, and diversion is in second. Errors and omissions, inspection follow-ups, incident reports, and then we have just one case marked as other. For the surrenders, technicians, we have 9, pharmacists 5, and 1 pharmacy and 1 DME. So we're online where we should be for the time of year for the number of cases. I think it may uptick with the cases that will generate from the AOC reports.
Josh, help me out. There have been phone calls made to board members about surrenders. When an inspector walks in and says, yada, 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 surrender your license, pharmacists and technicians feel that they have been denied due process. Whether they have been or not, I'm not involved in that, I don't know that. But I'm just saying, they're saying to us, that's not right. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but I think we really need to be careful to ask for automatic surrenders until that pharmacist or that technician at least has a chance for a free hearing conference.
Can I
Because-
speak to that, Stan, about sort of what our policy is?
I'm sorry, say it.
Let me speak to what our policy is on that.
I understand, you go ahead.
If in a case where there is indisputable proof of diversion of controlled substances, our investigators are authorized to ask for surrender if that's, and look, at 99 times out of 100, there is no dispute about that. And as the person says, I've been diverted, our folks are authorized to ask for a surrender at that point. Outside of that context, the policy is if an investigator is looking at a case and believes there is a risk of an immediate threat to the public health and safety of this person continuing to practice, their responsibility is to notify Josh, I've got a case that we're concerned about in that respect, to provide the report we've got there, and then each week at the senior investigative staff meeting, we discuss that and decide whether or not it's a case that we're going to authorize the investigator to even ask for surrender. The standard really that we're going to be using with those is it a case that we're so concerned about that if there wasn't a surrender, we would come to you and say, we need a summary suspension.
Well, I think that's a good and proper policy,
Right.
but those, many out there would dispute the board's position on that, and they feel like, well, I've got to turn my license in or I'm gonna lose them forever or something. And I don't know, I'm just saying that because that's what we're hearing.
Right, hard to
And
respond.
you
to
need,
that.
y'all need to know what we're hearing.
Right.
So I would say be very judicious about asking for the surrender and at least tell the pharmacist or the technician why you're asking for it. And you may be doing that, I don't know, because when you get these phone calls, you only hear the one side, you
Right.
don't know the facts.
I
So-
would say that I am entirely confident that it is very clearly explained in those cases we're asking. And again, these cases we're talking about, the vast, vast majority of them are cases in which there's indisputable proof or an admission. I have been diverting controlled substances and taking them at work or selling them to friends or.
Like I say, I agree with the policy and I agree
Yeah.
with the way
But
you're carrying it out.
Look, it's, you know, over the years, we dealt with this from time to time. We've had some tough cases, and again, it's hard for me to respond to the hearsay because it's hearsay, and I don't know what the specific cases are. But we've had a couple of cases, some of which you guys have been around long enough, Stan, you remember, Fair, that, like, we've had a couple of cases where parents of pharmacists got involved, where there was indisputable serious substance use and diversion, and all of a sudden the parent, and it's always an awkward thing when the parent of a 40-year-old professional is trying to interfere with the investigation and get in there. So it's hard to answer to, but I do know that about, what was it, Josh, 2 months ago was when we sat down as a senior staff and decided we needed to make sure, again, outside the context of indisputable proof or admission of controlled substance diversion, that we did need to have a better process for authorizing an investigator to ask for a surrender to avoid situations where, and I'm not condemning any particular investigator, but we don't want to have situations where it's a relatively minor violation of the law, or even if it's not minor, it's not one that can credibly said to present an immediate threat to the public health and safety, to make certain that folks didn't feel like, oh, well, surrender is what's expected.
And I guess part of it, Jay, is pharmacists out there, technicians out there know us. They don't know you, and they don't know Josh, and they don't know the investigators.
Right.
So they feel like colleagues.
Oh, I know, and it's a natural reaction, I understand that. Of course, a caution to all of you guys is to remember at any of these cases that could be disciplinary cases, if that has happened, and one of these cases coming forward, a reminder, you need to recuse from those. And sometimes remind folks, you know, you may be complaining to me because you think I can help you. Well, by dint of disclosing to me this case, you've now caused me to not be a part of it going forward on that.
When I get a call and they state it's about some investigation that could happen, I don't even return the call because I don't want to discuss it.
No, it is not our goal internally to coerce people into surrendering their licenses. Our goal is, would this be, again, the standard we're using is, would this be a case that but for a surrender, we would come to you and say, we think there's an immediate threat to the public health and safety that requires a summary suspension.
That's good.
Is there any mechanism, or should there be any mechanism to where the board would be knowledgeable of who voluntarily surrendered their license?
Well, it's all public. I mean, once it happened, we could give, I mean, yeah, the answer is yes. What do you want? It sort of would be we can give you whatever you want on that.
I think that's
Right.
another thing we need to have a time to discuss at a retreat, something like that.
Yeah.
To how you want to be informed about that, but then you could make a better generalization. So, yeah, but they had 24 voluntary surrenders, and all 24 of those people were a nuisance to public health, that type of thing. That way you get both sides. Maybe we talk about it at the retreat, but certainly a good item to discuss. You know, as a board member, we don't know who really did or didn't, and we don't choose to go look. I wouldn't know where to look anyway, to tell you the truth.
They go on the website with other disciplinary actions.
But you got to look at everybody.
No,
You could go chronologically, there's a chronological.
we have a cron file, and so
Yeah.
every new thing that happens is cron.
And we'll look, yeah, that's a good point. I've had some calls about that also, and we did have one case where maybe it was.
And that one case
And we
was
discussed
the.
that, and I'm good with
That one
that.
case was the case that provoked
Okay.
us to sharpen up our procedures.
But the thing about, I'll just tell you, is the thing that I see is voluntary surrender is okay, but I've been around here long enough to know about how much time you gotta serve for what you do, that type of thing. Sometimes voluntary surrender puts you in a case where you serve a lot more time than you would have, that type of thing.
Sometimes that is the case,
Yeah.
you know, for, given the circumstances of
Okay.
the situation, the facts.
I'm not complaining or fussing, I'm just telling
I
you that,
understand.
that's the facts as they are.
Right,
Yeah.
I understand, yeah.
But again, it's a good thing to discuss. We can discuss it about, you
Right.
had some report about once it's surrender, how many, who they were, and what the background was on that. I mean, we can certainly do any or all of that.
I guess the goal is to protect.
I don't know that we need to know who they are, we just need to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good discussion point, on that, but the focus is on the diversion. Now, there are, as you all know, especially guys who've been around here long enough, there is the occasional just flat bizarre case where it doesn't fit into a box of diversion, but it is a, oh my Lord.
That's why we got the sheriff in town.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
very good.
I have a question for Josh. You mentioned that you thought there would be a increase in the number of cases due to the AOC process. What is that?
Those are the cases that are generated from the nightly checks from the office of, the administrative office of the courts.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just gonna add, a few here and there. So, also let me add, I mean, to the last point on the surrenders, I am 100% confident in all of my field staff out there that they are not, going in there, badge flashing and, demanding, surrenders. We talk about this stuff, and like I said, we're all professionals, and I have the utmost confidence.
Just so you will know and your staff will know, so do I.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Pre-hearings went well yesterday, I thought. Testimony given by Melinda Smith and Liz Collier, I thought went well. Bill was the hearing officer. I thought it went well. So,
Thank you, Doc.
All
Appreciate
righty.
what you do, and nobody's trying to criticize your staff.
No, no, no.
We just,
no, I understand totally.
I
We don't
guess,
take it as that.
we're pharmacists, and we sit there, you guys probably don't understand that, but when somebody from the Board of Pharmacy walks into your pharmacy, it's interesting.
We totally understand it. Look, there's a reason, Gene, even when I walk into any pharmacy just because I need to pick up some Tylenol or something, I intentionally try to be invisible while I'm going through there, because I've had too many instances. I walk in and you can see all of a sudden there's some fire drill occurring in the back, and that's,
Years ago, I had a pharmacist, if an inspector walked in, I might as well send him home. He couldn't fill a prescription the rest
Well,
of the day if he had to.
back in 2007, I picked Dave Work up for lunch, and we had lunch together, and then Dave needed to pick up a prescription, so he and I both walked into Carrboro Family Pharmacy, and I thought,
I was over for the day.
yeah, the anxiety attack
it.
seemed to come on
Close.
immediately with that, so
Yeah. No,
Thank
we
you
understand
thank
it.
you for what you guys do.
Yeah,
I
no problem.
appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Never go back to you, man. We all got the
Thank
data.
you.
Okay.
You gonna come back up here, Ron?
I-
Stay there.
I'm right here. So the next item would be consulting fees that are over budget by $220,820. And that is part of the $1 million that's fenced off for IT infrastructure.
So that was our initial cost on the contract that you guys approved, and we have paid that out.
And then the last item I just wanted to point out that is over budget would be the insurance cost by $28,985.
That's line 60.
And that's the D&O policy for you guys.
Thank y'all for getting that taken care of.
Yeah, it has been taken care of. It is implemented now,
I
and
guess our budget next year will reflect these new. costs.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Do y'all have any questions or comments?
Thank you, great report.
No, thank you.
Update on the review by Office of State Auditor. I guess my first update would be that at the end of all this, Cindy Parham is going to be deserving of some sort of bonus or comp time or paid vacation, sabbatical, you name it. But it continues to go well at the field folks who have been here from the Office of State Auditor have been nothing but professional and friendly. We've had a very good working relationship. We continue to be where we're way beyond their looking at our systems and what we do, and we've received nothing but compliments on that. It's been the data testing, and so every couple of weeks they're here for a couple of days, and there's a data test, and Cindy and Crystal specifically are giving them what they need, and everybody goes back, and we hope it's the last one, and then a couple of weeks later there's a little more data, and we just got another one yesterday. So, again, it's frustrating not from results so far, but it's just we're a small office and it's consuming a lot of Cindy's time. But I am highly appreciative of how professional the OSA folks have been. And so, again, Cindy is due every reward, material and otherwise, that could be sent her way. So we'll keep you posted. We thought maybe after last week it was the last one, but we got a little more yesterday, and we'll continue. I got to brag, is Crystal in? I bragged on Cindy, but I got to brag on Crystal too, because we had a meeting with the field folks and was running through a lot of data, and there were questions. We've made as we've done this process, especially with inspections, from time to time there have been transitions where we improved a form or changed the data input, and at some of those transition points, I think that's where the Office of State Auditors really sort of focused on what was that transition and why, and documenting all that. And we were in danger during that meeting, I thought, of sort of going down this vortex of sort of everybody talking past each other, and Crystal got up, very smoothly walked in, sat down in a chair, and started grabbing those inspection reports and confidently walking through, well, this is how you know this, and it was an unbelievable performance by a real pro. So I want to make sure you get recognized for that. So we'll see. The timeline they gave us, their window for field operations extends into July, I think. So I don't know if they're going to make sure they fill that window or not, but we'll keep doing what we need to do. But I don't have anything to report from we went into a meeting, we're like, oh my Lord, we've got an issue here. So
Just keep it that way.
we're doing what we can do on that. So further, hopefully no further updates, because hopefully events won't warrant them. But okay, and then the last thing I had, well, there is a consent item I do want to pull out and talk about and explain that. But just a reminder, NABB District 3 is coming up in August. It's at the Grand Hotel in Point Clear, Alabama, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. A little hard to get to. You have to fly. Where do we fly into? Mobile. I think you fly into Mobile, and then it's about a 45-minute shuttle ride from there. But certainly, reminder, the registration hasn't gone up, not because Cindy isn't ready to put it up, but because she hasn't gotten some of what we need from the Alabama folks. But just be sure you got that on your calendar. We do have space for reports. If anybody from retail merchants, ACP, Mutual, anybody has anything to report or would like to report? Seeing none.
I have one quick question. This is for the board, I guess. We never have anywhere on the agenda for board members to bring up items that they would like to discuss. Is that because we really would like to have that information ahead of time so we could do some research on that? Is that right?
Well, you can bring, any board member who wants something on the agenda, the request would go through the president of the board and say, I want this on the agenda, and put anything on there. But it is important not to just put sort of a general open mic kind of thing, because for open meetings reasons, obviously, folks need to know what's going to be on the agenda. But
We have a new board member, so,
Yep.
just understand that there's a mechanism to have information that you want to talk about, put on the agenda, come through me or probably Jay. The one
yeah,
that's in
and
that.
if I get a suggestion, what I do is I send it right to the president and say, hey, this is something I want to discuss. Do you want on the agenda or not? And we'll do it. But yeah, you can do that anytime. And it's similar to what we tell members of the public. If a member of the public wants to be on the agenda, and we have this on the website, here's what you do and how you do it. We do ask that for public members or anybody from the public wants, they give us 2 weeks advance notice if there's anything we need to research or the like. But yeah, whatever agenda we put out needs to have everything that's going to be discussed on the agenda. But it absolutely, that's what we're here for. So.
Jay, where in Texas is Multigon this year?
Multigon is in Austin, and that is October 9th through the 12th. So,
October.
Austin's nice. If you've never been there, it's much fun.
So we're subject to talk about now the consent agenda, is that right?
Yeah, there's one I want to, if, with your permission, Mr. President, there's one thing I want to pull out, and if I could ask all the board members to look at the Medhouse permit consent agenda item. Recall the background on this. At the last meeting, the Alabama Board of Pharmacy had issued an emergency suspension to Medhouse Pharmacy based on problems with the compounding. Since that time, Alabama held a hearing on the emergency suspension, and you'll see if you scroll down, the Alabama board order is there. Alabama has lifted the emergency suspension of Medhouse Pharmacy, subject to certain conditions. Since the emergency suspension that was the basis for our emergency suspension has now been lifted, I've had discussions with Medhouse and Medhouse's attorney and Clint, and we have proposed the attached consent to lift the summary suspension of Medhouse's permit conditions that are in the Alabama order. Again, since there has been a hearing in Alabama that determined a basis for an emergency suspension has gone away, staff would suggest it's appropriate at this point to do the same here, again, subject to all the conditions that are in the Alabama order. It's still an open disciplinary matter down in Alabama. But Alabama, after a hearing, has determined that sufficient changes have been made that there's no longer an immediate threat to the public health and safety. So that proposed consent is in front of you. I mean, it can be part of the, you don't have to, you can vote on it separately, you don't have to, you just vote in the consent agenda, but because that came through a path different from
I
what.
think since we pulled it out, we need to address it
That's
individually.
perfectly fine with me.
Board have any questions about this situation?
Well, I saw an FDA 483 report, so I guess the Alabama board has satisfied themselves.
What I can tell you is the Alabama board is aware of that 483, but based on the evidence that they had at their hearing, they determined there was no longer a threat to the public health and safety, an emergency threat to the public health and safety.
And they're licensed, obviously, in North Carolina.
They do have an out-of-state permit with us, yes.
And this order specifically carves out that this isn't saying anything about any ultimate discipline or resolution of Alabama or here or any other case.
Right, this is not an order that says, we believe you're doing everything right. This is an order that says, we're lifting the emergency suspension because Alabama had a hearing and said there didn't need to be one anymore, but the case remains open in Alabama.
So they're still on the radar.
They, yes, they are certainly both on our, Alabama's, and every other state's radar on this. The
But
case is not over,
Fundamentally, we're relying on Alabama to protect citizens of North Carolina.
as we do with every out-of-state pharmacy that we issue a permit to.
Okay.
Any more questions or comments from the board about our position on this? Evidently, there's still an ongoing investigation. They're all subject to some type of
That is correct.
something going on.
Right, you'll see if you scroll down.
Might be including even a recall, is that right?
Yeah, they've been asked by FDA to conduct a recall. The condition, you'll see if you scroll down to the Alabama order, there are certain conditions they've imposed upon Medhouse for closer monitoring and certain experts and the like, and Alabama found that to be sufficient to lift
question
the
I would have
emergency
is,
suspension.
have they recalled anything that they should have recalled that came into North Carolina?
The FDA recall request was something that happened, last week, I think?
Right.
I can't give you the status today of whether that recall has occurred or not.
Would you not be more comfortable in waiting until you get the information back about that recall being completed? Is that-
Well,
that's
We've
going
talked about
They
this.
going too far?
In keeping with, sort of keeping with our earlier discussion about surrenders, you know, we have emergency procedures in place to keep, threats from materializing before we have a hearing, and there's a board that knows a lot more about it than we do that was inclined to, invoke those procedures earlier and now seem satisfied, so we don't have any separate information that would suggest a threat, so it'd be difficult to
So-
continue it.
I guess what you're saying is based on the information you have, you recommend that we take that action? You reckon, is that
I
right?
do recommend that we accept the consent order to lift the emergency suspension, and again, just to provide reassurance, this isn't a clearing of Meadows in any way.
Call for a motion in regards to this. What would a proper motion be, Mr. Campbell?
You just say, it could be a motion to, accept the proposed consent order in the Meadows Inc. matter.
As indicated, okay. Have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second, kind of slow coming. Is there any further need for discussion? Do we have any further need for discussion?
It concerns me, looking at their recall notice, that
Like you say, I guess we're depending on the other Board of Pharmacy to give us assurance that they feel like it's not an immediate threat. And to go through the due process, it's okay with them, is that right? That's pretty much what our motion is. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
no.
That motion passes with one dissension. Thank you.
You're right, and again, I appreciate your patience on that one. It's been sort of a strange one, and we do have one closed session.
We do.
Yeah, we do have a
We gotta do
closed
the
session.
rest of the consent.
Let's,
No, I'm
let's
sorry.
do the rest of the consent agenda then, if you would. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous, so the consent agenda is approved. We're gonna go into closed session. We thank y'all for being here today. We're gonna have lunch, probably served in about, well, I don't know.
Be here in about an hour.
If you wanna hang around
Folks
an
are welcome
hour,
to
have
hang around
lunch,
for
that
free
type
lunch.
thing, and,
Otherwise, staff will be eating for 2 weeks.
did we pass around the sign-up sheet?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd love to have you to stay and visit with us.
Well, we have a moment. Why don't you all, in the audience, introduce yourself to the board? Start with this young man with a nice green tie. No, let's keep, no. No, come up to the middle. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, if you would, come over here and be sworn in. And I may have a few questions for you after that.
My name's Hampton Hall. I'm a pharmacy student at UNC. I'm at Wheeler Discount Drug in Wallace for the summer.
Hi, I'm Heather Clellan. I'm also a pharmacy student at Eshleman School of Pharmacy, and I'm at Reload Discount Drug in Hampton.
Hi, I'm Amy Stewart. I'm a pharmacy student at UNC, and I am also at Reload Discount Drug.
Hi, I'm Angela Butler. I'm a pharmacy student at Campbell University, and I'm at Harris Teeter Pharmacy.
I'm Shannon Hart. I go to Campbell University, and I'm at Reload Discount Drug.
I'm Amani Karula. I'm a pharmacy student at UNC as well, and I'm at Reload Discount Drug in Lillington, North Carolina.
My name's Hafiz. I'm a second year student pharmacist now, and I'm also at Reload Discount Drugs.
Well, who's back home running the store?
Yeah.
I'll speak to Ms. McLaughlin about that. Sure.
Ellen Vick, board staff. Glad to be here.
I'm Philip Villier. I'm a pharmacy student at Campbell University, and I'm with Dave Catalano at Specialty Walgreens this month.
I'm Matt Shepard, a student at UNC. I'm also with Dave Catalano at Specialty Walgreens.
Which pharmacy?
Walgreens Special.
Walgreens, thank you.
With Doug Kettler.
Lauren Picknell, Public Supermarkets Pharmacy Supervisor for North Carolina.
Tori Mayer, Pharmacy Operation Manager for Public Supermarkets.
I'm Brittany Roberts. I'm a pharmacy student at UNC at the Harris Teeter University Mall.
Chris Rovnak, I'm a pharmacy manager for Cardinal Health here in Raleigh.
Crystal Shears, Crystal Stefanik.
Forgot her name.
Joey Sturgeon, graduated from Ole Miss Pharmacy School way back when. Now work for Silvergate Pharmaceuticals and live in Alabama.
I'm Alan Mueller. I'm a pharmacy student at UNC. I'm at Option Care this month.
My name is Asaja Jagan. I'm a pharmacy student at UNC, and I'm currently at United Pharmacy in Dillon, Alabama.
I'm Amariah Sanchez. I'm a P4 student at Campbell, and I'm at Mutual Receipt.
Hello, board. My name is Eric Moody. I'm a fourth year UNC
Thank y'all for being here today. I hope you picked up a little bit from.
I was worried with all the UNC people because I just gave final grades in the law class.
Yeah.
I was thinking that we might need to put a metal detector out front.
How did they do?
They did great.
Great.
So.
Mr. President, may I ask the gentleman from Alabama a question?
What would you say if I said no?
I would ignore you and ask it.
No, I'm not a big Saban fan.
I was just curious if they were gonna play football this fall.
I knew it was coming. Ole Miss Rebels by heart.
Thank you, Stan.
You're welcome.
Stan is from Moore County, so we have to make.
Their allowances.
Specialists, as you know.
So now I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? We're now in closed session. We'll see y'all.
Tell the president I'm going to the boys' room.
Yes, sir.
Can we have a split second, 5 minutes?
They're all waiting to pounce on the caterer.
Then once you let them go, they're gone.
Yeah, what's for lunch today, Jay?
I don't know. That's Leslie's bailiwick.
Oh, it's tacos today.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
really? That's cool.
just a little late Cinco de Mayo celebration here?
That's right, we also had bottles of tequila.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there any sangria?
Sangria, come on, dude.
If any of y'all see Joey, tell him I missed him today. It's not been the same. It's just,
Is Joey
You may text him.
we have this ongoing dialogue, you know, just, he's a
Is he
great,
going
great
to San
friend.
Diego?
Huh?
Is he going to San Diego?
I don't think so.
Okay, I thought there was mention of it.
Probably should, but
Uh-huh.
He could, but yeah, I don't. I
How
think
about
he's-
Andy? No?
I have not because of
He's
graduation.
got a graduation.
Okay, but everybody else?
Yes, Stan. Yep.
Yep, and what time, what day you're on?
I get there Thursday.
Mike, we appreciate
morning,
you
and
taking
then
time
I'm
to come out today
executive
and-
Committee meeting.
and bring us
All
up
day
to
Thursday
date.
and Friday.
Correct everything Jay said that was probably wrong. And we
Yes.
appreciate that.
You got that right.
Right, he did a
Well,
good
good
job.
morning, good
How are
morning.
you?
Good morning, everybody.
Great baseball series
Hey.
this weekend.
Oh, gee. We're going, what are we,
All I can say is that me and you are gonna be sitting at DBAP in 2 weeks,
that's right.
watching every
Yeah,
other
we'll
team
be the
that's
only-
in ours.
But we only people sitting there probably. You may have already talked about this, but what I would say to you, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
What I would say to you is that you can sum up what's going on in the legislature by saying HB2.
Yes.
That's pretty much a dominant factor over there, and we've got a lot of people that are concerned about that for various and sundry reasons. The question is, now that both the lawsuits were filed yesterday, the question is, where do they go from here? And I think being an election year, that's going to create quite a turmoil. That's what it's going to do. And Cooper running for governor is going to stretch this thing out as long as he can have anything to do with it, and I think the governor would like to see it over with very quickly. Problem we've got, and Jay can answer this question for us, he's the expert. What kind of time frame you think a procedure like this is going to take now?
To do what now?
The two lawsuits, HB2 lawsuits.
7 years?
No, it won't be that, because it's a deck action, and they're asking, probably a year.
Yeah, something like that.
Say a year, and then whatever appeals go to the Fourth Circuit.
Well, I think the district court will want to get it done quickly. It'll take some briefing, but it can all be done over maybe 6 months.
Yeah, maybe 6 months on it.
So we're gonna see this last, obviously, during the duration of the campaign season, for sure, I
Yep,
guess. And,
no doubt about that.
so it's gonna be interesting to see how this works. So we're gonna have an exciting fall, I think. We're gonna see all of this happening in North Carolina. Then we've got the presidential race going on, which is gonna be unlike anything we've ever seen before. So it's gonna be an interesting time. If you like politics, this is your time.
Do you think it's gonna affect our ability to get our little insertion done into a bill?
No, no.
There's gonna be some bills going through, right? Okay.
We've already gotten sign off from the powers that be that we can put this in reg reform
You
and.
just wonder if they'll be willing to pass any more bills.
Exactly, yeah. What's gonna happen between now and then? And that's what's going on in the legislature right now. You're just they're sitting over there saying, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? So they did in fact, meet last week on appropriations and decided both in the House and Senate, they were gonna come up with a number. And so, the legislature decided their number was gonna be $22.2 billion, which is about a 2.2% increase over the budget. And, the governor's budget was $22.8 billion, which is about a 2.8% increase. House and Senate are saying, no, this is it. This is as much as we're going to spend. They're the ones that passed the budget. The problem the governor's got with that is that he's gone on record for months now telling the teachers that he's going to give them a 5% increase, and the the state employees at large are going to get a 3% bonus. If he comes up 2.2 and 2.8, he's got a problem in that situation. So he's going to have to figure out what he's going to do. And you fall back and say, well, maybe what they're really going to do is what they always do, and that's kind of meet in the middle. However, if he meets in the middle, he still doesn't have his money for the 5% increase for teachers. Paint that in the picture of, once again, an election year. He's got 680,000 people out there that he's told them he's going to do something emphatically, repeatedly. He's not going to be able to do it unless he convinces the legislature to come up with that amount of money. So we are in what they call the short session, as you all know. And this is the kind of thing that turns a short session into a much longer session. You know, I can remember us being in session until December because we were fighting over money for teachers and other things that the governor wanted. So, you know, in the legislature, the joke over there is that when the governor does his budget and it comes over to the legislature, it's dead on arrival. Because they're gonna do their own budget and they're gonna do it the way they want to. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out. This will be a real test for the governor's office. And so that's kind of where we are. The one thing that we do see is that, as you may or may not know, Medicaid came up about $130 million in the black this time, which is a real unusual thing for Medicaid. The federal government has supplied an extra percent, and this really didn't contribute to that. You know, we all think about the governor, the federal government's portion of Medicaid is 65%. They kicked that up to 66%, and nobody can answer the question why, but they did. And so that will move forward to bring them a considerable amount of money that they didn't have. What's interesting about the budget as a whole is that the state has come up with about $330 million more than they anticipated, and they contribute that to taxes that they didn't anticipate getting. So everything is looking financially very sound here, and I think what you're going to find before we get out of the legislature is they're going to try to figure out how to spend some of that money that they haven't spent up to this point. So we'll have to wait and see where they try to direct that, because the legislature has their own ideas about where they want that money to go, as
Well,
opposed to the governor.
That explains part of why the state health department, I mean, the Catawba County Health Department, for one, is getting some of the holdback that's
Yep.
been
Yep.
held back for,
Exactly.
since year 2000. I mean, North Carolina Medicaid program owes Catawba County hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And they're not the only one.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They wouldn't single out Catawba County.
Is Medicaid reimbursement still moving toward the NADAC scenario sometime in the near future?
Yeah. I think
Moving towards what?
they're NADAC, yeah. They're still working on that, and this is, the whole process now, Gene, is that it's in being programmed. I mean, that's what it is. The question is, when do they get it programmed?
So-
And when does it go into effect?
Once they institute that, are they gonna go back and try to get back money they have overpaid theoretically since January 1st?
I think that we have that contained,
Okay.
yeah. The way it looks at the moment.
Greater boom for them as far as their Medicaid, budget surplus then, because they're gonna pass a lot less.
Yeah. Well, what you're seeing in that scenario you're talking about is the fact that our argument has always been, since they first started talking about it in January, is that by the time you program all the computers, go through the process of taking the money back in the process,
They lose
you're not
money.
really gonna net out any
Give it
real
to
money.
somebody else.
Yeah. And so I think they're beginning to see that makes
There's a
sense.
push to just
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
that won't happen.
When we get to that point, they just move forward, is what they do. It's a very difficult situation for them, because anytime, as you all know, what they have to do is go through all the SPA process. And it takes CMS a long time usually to respond to SPAs. And you've probably heard this story before, but I always think it's very interesting. When they do a SPA,
What does that acronym
state
mean?
plan amendment, it's a state plan amendment they're sending in to CMS to get them to approve some process the state wants to do in order for them to get the federal money. So when they send in a SPA, CMS has got 90 days to respond. And so if they wait 85 days, so to speak, to respond, send back questions to the state, then the state's got 90 days to respond. And so you can just kick this ball back and forth, and you can take up a year, 2 years, as long as you want to take up, if you're trying to stall something, basically, is what it amounts to. But the good news, I'll just use this as a segue into this. The good news this morning is, I got an email from John Stansel a while ago, who's the head of pharmacy and Medicaid, saying that the SPA for immunization has been approved. And so what that means is now that pharmacy will be able to bill Medicaid for injections. That was approved. They got the notice last night. Now, what they have to do is send that over to CSC, or TRAX, NC TRAX as we know them, and get all that programmed in. And he's predicting that'll happen by midsummer. It'll get done. The real quest was here to make sure it was in place by the time we get into fall flu vaccines and all this kind of thing.
So
Now
we're
that
looking at August or September to being able to bill for the,
August,
We'll have the time.
and that would be all injections.
yeah. Everything that's listed, pretty much CDC injections, flu,
Since
shingles.
I've
all
got this
that.
menu here, can I ask you the question I asked you
Yes, sir.
yesterday?
Yeah.
I talked to Mike about the, since the pharmacies are doing a lot of vaccinations now, and immunization, whatever you call it, that kind of stuff, there's getting a lot of physicians who are somehow pressing their patients to go to the pharmacy to get that B12 injection. What will be the process to enable that?
I can tell you that.
Thank you.
Well, of course, one process always, you can go to the legislature and say, we'd like a statutory authorization to do that. The other long-existing process is state law says that pharmacists may administer, well, let me back up. CPP, who had it in their protocol, could do it, but that's not obviously a terrific solution to that. State law says that pharmacists may administer drugs pursuant to rules agreed upon by the nursing, medical, and pharmacy boards. Now, the nursing board historically always has been perfectly agreeable to this. The medical board historically tends not to be agreeable to these sort of things, but there is a rule-making process available. And just to interject, another piece that keeps coming up on that, you may have heard about this too, Mike, is there are a lot of pharmacists that would like to be able to administer long-acting antipsychotic injections. And Joe Moose has been looking at that for a long time, and others have. And I think that there's it's hard to argue the public health and safety, anything opposed to that, but that's the process. It would have to be a joint rulemaking.
And I think the process of adding.
I'm not sure I want to do that again, but
I know.
Do it.
I know. We all have our scars from that. That's.
But that would be, could we float that by the med board?
Sure.
And it's just pretty much precipitated by the physicians, you know.
Oh, listen, my experience, I know that we're jumping the rail a little bit on this. My experience is every time something like this comes up, that, whether it's B12 or it's physicians who are out in the field are the ones who want pharmacists to be able to do that. The challenge is that the physician, it's not even usually it's more like the medical society and others folks say, oh no, this is the camel's nose in the tent problem. If today injection of B12, tomorrow it's neurosurgery on the dispensing counter. So
that's kind of, I've always been.
You remember all that.
To move forward and not put what we already have in jeopardy.
Correct, yeah.
But it is, I was thinking that, if you had a specific order from the physician.
Oh, right.
Then that would take a lot of their grief away, maybe. But I don't know who you would float that by in a casual conversation.
I can
David.
David.
That it'll probably be 2020 before we get to that point. They just had 12 public hearing meetings across the state, and the ones that I went to, you pretty much heard the same thing from doctors and nurses and so forth, and that is pay attention to the patient. You've got to realize that managed care may not be the same objective for patient care as we think it is. So whether that's right or wrong remains to be seen, but their whole logic in these meetings was be careful of what you're looking at and make sure you cover all your bases, make sure the contracts are proper when they get started. So. With that, I'll leave this by saying, did you see the amount of medication that was turned in on April the 30th on Take Back Day?
Uh-huh.
Did you see that? 447 tons of medication. What I would like to know is how much of that came from the VA, is what I'd like to know.
Well, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Mike.
Good to see you. Yeah. See you later.
And Mike, so it's on the rail background.
We'll keep working on it, absolutely.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Anything else, Mike Campbell?
No, sir.
Mike,
Have a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
We stand adjourned. Thank y'all.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, okay,
This is the first.
okay, now it's time for Andy Spankin.
Do I get a spanking?
Yeah.
Robert, since we got a couple of minutes before lunch gets here, can you and me and Kristen just check? We're not going to consume a bunch of your time, but just.
Excuse me, Bill, stay put, I'm just gonna do this. There we go.
Not that, I'll see you at dinner.
All right, yeah, good.
And we can just open it up.
This boy don't miss a meal.
No, try not. No need to, is it?
Yes.
You come look at something for
CNC.
Because I've been filling these out for mileage. I just want to make sure I'm doing this right.
Same thing as all these other people.
Yep, 100 there and 100 there.
Yep.
And
See
then.
you out there, hook us the trip,
Thank you.
have fun, pre-meeting fun.
And you're gonna be there just in time for the Tell Pharmacy meeting on Saturday. Okay.
Well, you paid for my meal, yes. Right. But that's fine.
If I'd known more people were going to Friday, I might have arranged to get out there earlier, but at this point, I
Yeah,
have a bunch of
we
change.
use whatever the
Yeah.
IRS works.
So jam or no jam?
So we didn't change anything with that
Oh.
thing we did today. And,
She's gonna have a sister weekend with her sister.
Oh, that's good.
and I just want to make sure I'm doing.
Are y'all getting some baby get added to ornithology?
Well, we get pictures every day, but
Yep.
100.
I went by there last week and she was in a bad, Abigail was in a bad mood and hungry and whatever, so.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do a thing about it.
All I need, if somebody give me a date, I can work about anything, but what bothers me is when they give me a date and then change it.
And,
Whether she needs to be or not, I think.
As long as I.
Okay, if I don't get it,
she's new mommy.
I know what's right.
Wait, how long is she gonna be out there? She's gonna be
But I
out
just
for
need to
months.
know.
Lauren,
Well, they're moving to
There it is.
Kingsport,
Okay, well,
Johnson City area. Next.
Well, take care, bud.
and is that where all of his family moving to do?
He's already got a job there, so she's not going back working until.
Uh-huh.
okay.
That's pretty good.
I think